no rights and wrongs either. Some people will go for the good enough without deal breakers and fiddle around with little flashes of ecstasy every so often. Some people don't need to.
Do you know, I was listening to a presentation a little while back, and there was this guy talking about men's role, and for example, you know, I think they almost came back to the Me Too type campaign about how men can be abusive and you know and behave the way they do, and it seems that a lot of men have been put into that category, even though it's not right. I mean, I think that Roxanne Pallett, who was on Big Brother last year, who accused the guy of abusing her, and it turned out that she got it wrong, even though she was fairly aware what happened. And I think her career has ended by now. But the guy was saying that a guy's role in some ways is very much about being honourable and protective. And when you actually sort of take that role away from him, it just opens the door to all those, to some of the few bad guys out there who will actually take advantage of that situation. Whereas when the man, because where men are protective over their women, because that's how they see their role. And there's a lot of women who are still attracted to that. And you talked about power in a previous podcast, and they like that level of power because they feel protected and secure by that power, because that's what we get our certainty from. And certainty is actually one of our biggest human needs, is it not?
Absolutely right, it is.
So,
because certainty is control. So if you're not in control, you're stressed.
So you know, so women like women are probably they have a need for certainty more than men do. Men are willing to take actually more risks, but they
Why is
all.
that?
Why is that?
Because
women. It's usually because women conform to the system better. And also, it's one of the things that it's one of the reasons probably why women actually do better at school is because they conform to the system better.
Why do they conform?
No, come on.
Because
if you got the answer, then come out with the answer.
Because they're more anxious on the whole. So you see, anxiety seeks a structure, and that's exactly. It's not because they're clever.
And that anxiety is taken away by actually having a level of certainty and security.
Yes,
which is provided by men.
Correct. It's
right.
Beautifully said.
Okay, so carry on.
Well, no, that's it, and that's the, and as you quite correctly said, because of political correctness, seeking to remove differences and make everything the same, then of course the concept of toxic masculinity is making men less than they are. So they are too afraid.
Who comes down with toxic masculinity? I mean, you know, it's very
political
much
correctness.
You know, feminists have really come out with this because
See,
they don't want men,
feminists.
they don't need men, or they believe they don't need them, and all of a sudden it's these very few loud voices that are actually having an impact on the larger majority. But the thing is, what's actually driven is that it particularly is come from the media, because they are sound bites that the media can actually pick up on and actually put online, and they're so desperate for putting information out on such a in seconds, basically, is how the world works now. It's not like before where we used to have like one day of the newspaper. Now it's actually, if we don't get the story out there, even if we can't actually confirm the facts, they will then apologise afterwards. But they're so desperate to put it out there. I mean, even the other day there was an article by, I think, something Ivanka Trump said. She called it United Kingston by mistake on Twitter, and it was a typo. Yeah, that was enough for the Business Insider, which is an online platform, to actually pull her up on that. And I just didn't see that as news. Yeah, they're so desperate. It's like that Danny Baker, who has to put something out there to make sure that he's still visible enough and provocative enough that he's going to get attention. But the thing is, when you actually snatch at information like that without really thinking about it, because we live in this world of instant gratification, that people are just no longer thinking about what they're actually putting out there. Or the damage it can actually cause. So all of a sudden, the media picks up on these stories, whether it's transgender or whatever, and they will make a big deal out of it. Now, I haven't got a problem with transgenders myself, and there was a place because I work at up in town, and in the building I work in, they had this LGBTQ awareness month. And the thing is, has no impact on me. And it's not, I'm against gays, I'm not against transgenders. I think you should live your own life. But the thing is, I was thinking about it, what was the importance of that when you actually consider that actually transgenders have been around since I was a kid. Now, I don't know what more rights
Transgender has been around since biblical times.
Probably. But I have not. Sorry, you've thrown me there. But the thing is, I don't know what more they had. And rather than actually make a media story out of it and create awareness and pull out people and pull people up on their transgender phobia or whatever. Now, if you actually let them naturally integrate into the world, I think it would have been more. We would have accepted it more. But what's happened is there's now higher attacks and things like this on transgenders, because the thing is, you're forcing it down people's throats rather than just let it naturally ease into the ether and just be absorbed. But no, by making these big statements, it's like the analogy about the frog. You put a frog, and it's not necessarily a true analogy, but if you put a frog into a pot of boiling water, what will happen? It'll jump straight out because the change of environment is too sharp. Whereas if you actually put a frog into some cold water and heat it up underneath, it'll actually get cooked itself. And the thing is, because it's not aware until it's already integrated. But the media actually is probably the most damaging thing on this planet right now, because they are putting out stories and the editing and the things like this are making the information they're putting out there not inaccurate and very biased as well, actually.
Well, you see what they do, it becomes...
Which has a huge impact on people's confidence as well, because people don't know what to believe.
I mean, it's a bit like the fallacy of proportional representation. So, for instance, there was a wonderful sketch by Not the 9 O'Clock News when there was obviously some form of council or political party having a meeting, and at one point they say, right, I think we should take a break. Everyone vote for a break. So everyone puts their hand up and they go carried unanimously, and then they go tea or coffee. Let's vote for tea and coffee. So tea, everyone puts their hands up for tea apart from one person, and then coffee, that one person puts his hand up. Then he starts counting 10,000, 15,000, 25. And then he looks at his own hand and he goes, 1 million, carried. So the fact is that the Marxist way of political correctness means that it insists on equal outcome for everyone, irrespective of differences. So in other words, every building must have an LGB toilet, for instance, which of course is complete nonsense, because there's relatively few people who are LGBT. But so therefore, it's by forcing people's rights down your throat disproportionately to their number, then that becomes a problem.
It causes problems. Actually, I'm going to go off subject, actually, because there was something I saw, I think it was on Thursday, which surprised me, but also I would say actually pleased me as well. Actually, I wouldn't say pleased. I was surprised, but in a pleasant way. And there was outside my place of work, there's about once a week there's this Muslim guy, and he comes in. He's giving away free copies of the Quran in English version, and I see him there once a week outside. And on this particular occasion, there was a Jewish man in his ringlets and his hat, and so he was obviously highly religious as well, typical Orthodox. And they were having a very normal conversation. They were talking about all I heard was talking about Moses and things like this, but they were having this very pleasant conversation. And even reading the body language, there was a lot of harmony in the conversation that they were having, which was really good to watch. Because as soon and this is where you find it, because they weren't threatened by each other. They were just very much speaking on an equal level. As soon as you start, and this is where the media puts a lot of fear in as well, as soon as you start creating threats and going to such an extreme in terms of your views, what happens is there's always going to be another side that is actually going to push back against it. And if you, I even wanted to take a photograph on my phone, but the thing is, I was a bit reluctant because it was inappropriate. But I would have liked to, because it was actually a really good thing to actually see.
Yeah, I mean, it is very interesting. But just like you see every religion, they probably found a lot of commonality in their religion,
and that's what it is. It was commonality because they were both believers in faith,
and
even
also
though they were different.
Every religion can be extremist. So, for instance, like the Muslims, the Muslim in somewhere in I'm not sure it's written, but it's certainly taught by clerics that men should beat their wives.
Men should beat their wives.
Yep. And there was even someone on LBC Talk Radio who said there's nothing wrong with beating your wife in a beautiful manner. I mean, if you think about it, it's complete nonsense. But then in Christianity, see, I